Welcome to On Work and Revolution, where we talk about what's shaking up in the world of work right now and how we can make work life suck less. For me, I'm always aiming for a slightly higher bar than that, right? So I'm hoping for amazing workplace, but suck less. There's certain days we'll go with that, right? I'm your host, Debbie Goodman, and today we have Jeff Melnyk chatting to us as our guest. So Jeff Melnyk and I, we could be brothers from another mother. Listen to the first two lines of his bio. It says, I believe we should all have the opportunity to do work we love, that changing the world starts with a change within ourselves, and that we can each be pioneers, creating amazing workplaces to work where people are free to realize their dreams. Jeff, you and me, we're here to help create amazing workplaces in the world, right? So Jeff is the founding partner of Within People, which is a consultancy that works with amazing brands, helping to connect people to purpose, build incredible leadership teams and culture, all of which is intended to drive growth. To date, they have taken more than 100 companies, brands that you know and love, on this journey, and Within has also scaled, profitably, might I add, to 3 continents in 5 years. Wow. He must be good. He's been recognized as a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts for his commitment to supporting brands for positive social change. Wow. And the passion for creating amazing workplaces, Jeff, that's not our only connection point. Jeff is a music artist. He's the co-founder and producer at Gay Monkey Records, which is an incredible music platform for artists. Their music has won prizes and topped download charts. Jeff, I've known you for years, and I didn't realize you were still side hustling with this. How friggin' amazing.
Debbie, I love that you slipped that in. Thank you.
I mean, that's like the coolest thing. You got your regular day job and you got this other amazing day job.
I mean, and it's hard. Sometimes people are like, how do you okay, so you're the coach consultant guy, you're the purpose thing, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then what's this gay monkey thing? And you sort of it's like two brains that people can't put together. But obviously, all these pieces of the puzzle fit together, don't they?
They do. I mean, I sometimes think that when I explain to people that I used to be a professional choreographer, dancer, director, that's like the most interesting thing about me. They don't really care about all the other business stuff that I've done. That is like the thing that they are so interested to hear about. Yesterday, I delivered a virtual keynote to a group of HR leaders on hybrid work models in a post-pandemic work life, and realized that the questions that were coming in, people are really struggling with figuring out how to build culture and a sense of belonging remotely. And I did not have very good answers for them. So they were asking me questions and I was just faking it. And then I remembered that the guy who is an expert on this particular topic was coming on the podcast
to record
to On Work and Revolution. I was like, perfect timing.
Yeah. I mean, it's the hot topic, isn't it? And I think when you overlay the other hot topic of flexibility into that, ooh, now leaders have got a real quagmire, don't they? Yeah, I don't think a lot of people really think about what they need to do when it comes to creating, nurturing, growing cultures. I think a lot of people think oh, well, maybe we'll map it out. So we'll have some purpose, we'll have some values, and then we've got a culture, right? Or we've got some great things in the office, like we can bring our dogs in. That used to be my favorite thing. We have a really great culture here because we have dogs in the office. That was my bugbear pre-pandemic. Thank goodness the pandemic took the office away because I didn't have to hear that anymore. Now we just have kids in the Zoom screen. That was a different one. But I think I do think that most leaders aren't really thinking about what culture is and what it means for their growth for a business. And you have a culture whether or not you've defined it or not, right? Culture is everything. If you've got people in a business, you're going to have culture. So if it's how do we work with culture? How do we understand it? How do we grow culture? That needs to be the first thing that people are thinking about. And then we can talk about remote, flexible, hybrid. Right. Yeah.
the way that I've understood culture, because you and I have been working together for a number of years, so I'm a little more schooled, I think, than your average person, is it's essentially like the way we do things around here. And as you said, there's a culture, regardless of whether it's one that supports people to have a healthy work life or one that is ruthless and brutal and demoralizing. The culture is the way we do things around here. So, and I do think that particularly in the context of remote, I think the question is coming from the sense of we have people who are feeling disconnected, disengaged, and then we have new people who are joining our company who have no idea of how we do things around here and how do we describe it and how do we explain it and how do we have them both know it and feel it when it's not codified and where it's really hard to get a sense of how do we do things around here.
Right. So if it's the way we do things around here, to have some clarity on that, you have to have something written down that sort of says this is the way we do things around here. So your values are a first port of call, right? Because our values are the behaviors of our culture. So this is how we show up here. That's one really great thing that sort of codifies the way we do things around here. That could also be, part of our values is how we collaborate, but there could be different processes or ways of being in the employee experience that show how we work with each other. So that's quite important to kind of get right. The rituals we have in the culture are also the way we do things around here, right? And I often explain it to if I go to France and I want to get a sense of the culture and I observe the way they are doing things, that's going to be different than if I go to Argentina or if I go to China, because different cultures have different ways of doing things. And I can observe those. I can feel them. I can sense them. They're experiential. So once we have a bit of clarity on what those ways are, those things are very teachable, aren't they? So I know what they are, so I can explain them to you, and I can say, okay, you, new joiner, have come from Company X. Welcome to our wonderful unicorn land. Let me explain you how we do things around here. And I think that's the step that's first missed in onboarding, isn't it? It's like, welcome. Here's your desk, here's your computer, or here's just some stuff, some tasks, get going, remote worker. And there's no way of sort of bringing people into that understanding and experience of this is how we do things around here. So surely the first part of call after we've written it down is how do we teach it? How do we explain it?
So I think, just to go back a bit, I think that there are a number of companies, and certainly companies that I advise, because when we brief with them to do a leadership search, we'll ask them questions about, so what's the culture like and how do things work around here? And they often do have some kind of document that's in some kind of file on some kind of platform somewhere.
Or a Notion
and then they'll
page.
haul it. Yeah, there we go. And they'll haul it out, and they will often actually be something that is written down. And it's usually something that is aspirational, something about how they wish the culture might be, something that in their belief system, this is how it is, coming from maybe a few people who collaborated on this particular document. And then it's used in some kind of onboarding pack that is sent to a new joiner, or it's hauled out from time to time at the annual or quarterly retreat. But it's not lived, and people don't know it. And it often doesn't bear resemblance to the actual lived experience of people. And particularly, and let's just take the scenario of our remote work world, where when people used to go into a physical place where they spent most of their time together, it was kind of easier, I think, to have a sense of how do things work around here, certainly in one smaller world. Is it hard? Is it harder? Maybe that's just an assumption that I'm making. How does both the words of how we work around here and the feeling, how does that get transmitted to people who've not necessarily met each other in person, who've not gone into a physical space to have a sense of the energy and the vibe? How do we do that?
We're human beings and we are extrasensory. So we pick up on things, don't we? So we pick up things that we see, we pick up things that we hear, the feelings of stuff. So that makes it a little bit harder. But if our values tell us the behaviors of our culture, then it's the actions that really lead us into really understanding how we do things around here. And that shouldn't matter if you're fully remote, hybrid, in the metaverse. It shouldn't really matter, because I can still sense and feel and experience something based on the way people show up and behave. So one of our values at Within is learn together, right? So that embodies, like, I have a responsibility then as a founder to not only help people learn, but also that I am a receiver of learning. So it's learn together. It's not learn from Jeff, right? So underpinning that behavior is underpinning that value are some behaviors that really explicitly say, I have to show up to that by being generous with my time. So if I was in an office, how might I do that? So that might mean that, okay, well, maybe we go for lunch together, or maybe I spend more time training you or whatever. How is that any different from a remote experience? So if I'm going to live that value of learn together, if a new joiner who's joining our team remotely, and by the way, we are a fully remote business and always have been, that means I have to be generous with my time. So if I don't show up to that value and someone says, hey, can I grab 10 minutes of your time? I just want to go through something. I'm struggling with this right now. And I go, sure, but look at my calendar and I'll see you next Tuesday. Then how am I living that value? And how would that be any different than if I closed my door in the office and said, speak to my PA and you can schedule some time with me? That's going to show up in either case, isn't it?
We've got listeners who are HR professionals and facilitators and consultants and coaches and doing this type of work in their organizations. And so what I'm hearing is that where there is some kind of well-codified set of values and behaviors, part of the work now is to determine, what does this mean how does one translate this into the remote setup? If you weren't remote previously and you are hybrid or remote now, how do we translate the values, the actions, the behaviors into what this means for us now in this different scenario, to not just have the labels, the words, but also really rethink what this means in terms of how do we do this learn together or plan for excellence or whatever it is in a different setup. And I think that that's like a really helpful next step. Like, we need to think about how to live this in a different way. And it's not very difficult, actually, now that I'm saying it. That shouldn't be too complex. My question is...
And it might not be that different as well. And I think using stories around what does it look like, rather than just, we need a policy of something, that's not going to really change something. But like, in this context of when we're working remotely, what does learn together look like? And if we were together in a physical space, what would it look like? What's the commonality between those two things so that people can see those? Because, I mean, the reality is most companies are probably going to be more hybrid than they are going to be remote or physical. And hybrid comes with its own challenges, because now you're working with two different energies.
We created our own codified, we actually called it Twadata, which stands for, I love acronyms. So it stands for the way we do things around here. And we created this amazing document, which was an explanation of our values: perform to win, look beyond the obvious, build connection. But it was actually taken into how we work. And we used that both for new people joining our company at Jackhammer. We shared it with our clients. Everybody just loved it because it was just such a cool way of explaining the culture and values. And I must just say that that was not an original idea. I actually got that idea from some other fabulous company out there called, I did adapt it. And then recently what we've done is I said, okay, guys, we need to update this, because we used to be a mostly in office, and then there were some people who worked a bit remotely. We had one full-time remote person, and now we are hybrid, but mostly remote, because I think the team goes into the office in our Africa office every second Friday. That's our cadence for in-office time. So it's mostly remote. And I said, well, I think we need to really reflect on all of the Twadata, the way we do things around here. How are we doing things around here now? Because they have certainly changed. And how have we applied some of the principles in our new world? Where is it similar and where is it very different? And are we still living up to those values of build connection, look beyond the obvious, perform to win, and how is it different? And so it was really interesting to see the stories that came back from the team, because we co-created this new version of our Twadata hybrid
2.0.
version. 2.0.
Twadata 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. So, we co-created the first one. And so it was really interesting to see how people are making sense of how we're living those values now in this slightly iterated, newish world.
Why don't companies do more of that all the time? I mean, there's been a disruption. This is the new world. There's hybrid or there's remote. But like you said before, if we codified our values and then we just put them in a drawer, then we're not actually living them. And if they're behaviors, we should see them in action, which means we can assess them. So one thing that we do with our clients as well is take those values and really clearly articulate the range of behaviors that sit within the behavior. So what is expected of you? What does it look like when we work at our best? And what does it look like when we don't work at our best? And I think even in doing that, you could go, what does it look like when we've got some additional challenges like hybrid? What are the expectations that we might have around that, so that those expectations are clear? Because you see what happens with things like hybrid, right? Half the people are in the office, some people are on the screen, the people on screen get ignored because everyone in the office is talking. So you can have agreements around the way we work in that environment, right? That's very clear. But if your behaviors and your values say things like the way that we collaborate, those are very easily measurable. And so everybody can be held accountable to that. And I think that's the bit that a lot of businesses, they sort of draw the line out. We have a culture, we've got some values, but we don't actually hold each other to account to them. We don't use them for performance appraisals, because surely we should just be getting the work done. So they forget that the quality of how they do things around here leads them towards excellence of delivering on their purpose and their vision. And when I look at a business and I see, okay, you've got values, you've got them written down, great. But if you're not using them to recruit, if you're not using them to onboard, if you're not using them to create your rituals, looking at how you review performance, if you're not using them to hold people accountable for the way you do things around here, don't bother having them. Right? And so that if culture is really going to be lived, we have to see values embedded into all of those processes. And as you said, many of our listeners here are going to be HR practitioners. Let's take them off the hook here, because I think a lot of what I just said sounds like those are HR practices. Absolutely not. This is something that every leader and manager and employee is accountable for. Our values are common within the business. They are for everyone. Values are not an HR artifact. They are for everyone.
I advise companies in, VC-backed startup companies and more established firms, big corporations, and I too frequently hear from the C-level or executive level in a company that they need some culture work done. And they need this culture work done by HR or the chief people officer or whoever it is, and just get a consulting company in to do this HR stuff, to do this culture stuff. There's almost like this dismissiveness around this sidebar that is culture. They know that it's important. They've been told at business school or somewhere that, companies that live and have a living, breathing set of values that they are working with all the time outperform. So there's this recognition that it's one of those important things that you should attend to, but there's no real embracing of taking it on themselves, and it's put to the side as an HR job. Why does that happen in the first place, and then how do you handle that?
Well, I think first, I don't think HR professionals are yet schooled and trained themselves in codifying, developing, and strengthening cultures within organizations. It's the sort of, if you see what's happened in the sort of evolution of HR from personnel into HR, now with the people and culture team, we can see that people are trying to go, oh, we have people in our business. So so we're making a thing. Oh, yeah, I guess people are making a thing. Oh, I guess we got to do something with the people. And most executives aren't really schooled either in how to deal with the people. So they go and they get their MBA and they're told that culture is important. but they're not taught how to deal with human dynamics, are they? And the world of work has changed so much that we're realizing that actually human capital is important. The way that, we use people inside business is quite sensitive now, right? Like we have to take care of people. Their well-being is important. Oh gosh, that's a bit hard, isn't it? How do I deal with different kinds of individuals in my organization? And it becomes really, really tough. So I think executives are not only responding to the, oh yes, we know that cultures are going to help drive our growth. I don't really know how, but that's fine. I can outsource that. To also understanding that organizational dynamics are difficult and people are hard. And isn't it easier if we can just make some software and roll it out to some companies and they'll just buy our things? Oh crap, I've got engineers that are going to do that and I don't know how to do that. It's tough, isn't it?
The process of doing this work of co-creation, particularly let's say it's a new team, or there's been a lot of remoteness and we weren't able to get together. But I know workshops, which is typically the way in which this culture work, I've got inverted commas, the culture work typically gets done in facilitated workshop style settings that pre-pandemic was always done in person, almost always. And then I know that you were figuring out how to facilitate sessions remotely. And now that we have the option, when you had to do the work mostly remotely, was it as effective as doing the work in a group workshop setting? And now, what do you recommend?
Because we were a remote always business, we pivoted super fast to doing things online and using collaborative tools that we could do that and making them fun and engaging. It is, look, I love doing things in a room. I get a lot of energy out of people. I'm a coach, so I can read them and understand them. We work with multiple cultures at once as well. We've done stuff with UNESCO where I've got 20 different languages in a room. So I've got the Russian table over there and the, French delegates over there. And that's our power, within, we're good at that stuff. But doing it online offers you a really interesting way to globally do that as well. When I was doing a lot of the work pre-pandemic, I was on a plane quite often. That's quite tiring. I quite enjoy that I can do global work in time zones in one day. It's a wonderful gift that the pandemic gave us. It actually brought us closer in many ways like that. I think we have to recognize that we are working in a hybrid situation now. There are going to be people who are not going to come to a workshop in person because they have the ability now to say, I'm just not going to do that, right? I can't. I'm a carer. I've got to take care of people at home. I've got kids. I'm not going to commute an hour, or I moved out of San Francisco and I now live in Montana, so I can't come at all. So you have to design for a hybrid situation and you have to be inclusive. So that's a creative challenge. And I think all teams are working through that. They're finding wonderful ways to collaborate. And I think people are enjoying that experience now. I've seen really great hybrid experiences where I think the outcome was better because of the tools that they're using and the way that they're engaging with each other, and that teams are really good at doing that now. I think we also have to recognize that not all people do work that way too. So we Amy's Kitchen is one of our big clients in the US, and we're working with them on their employee experience in their manufacturing plants. Those people cannot work hybrid or remote because they are folding burritos and making amazing organic vegetarian food every day. And the challenge there is, how are we going to engage as many people in our manufacturing plants without shutting the plant down? Because we got to keep the line running. So how do we design a process where people can come and engage with things and leave their opinions, almost like a little bit of a roadshow or an experience, but they can do that in bite-sized ways that feel really meaningful. And I think I love every one of those challenges, because that to me, bringing it back to the Gay Monkey story, if you can do things like that to me is like creating music or a show or when you're going to put on a production, is like, how do you make something that is a seamless experience for somebody that allows them to bring their best creativity to something because they are so immersed and engaged in the content you're providing them. And that to me is just creativity. And I think throw those challenges at us and we will find the way. And I think teams should be able to do that too. I think that's like in your business, be creative, people. I think the other thing that, as you were talking, that really struck me is if we embrace this new space and really understand how powerful it is, can we also see how it can drive equity in our businesses? Because now suddenly everybody can have a voice. Everybody can be involved in the culture. If it was just the shop floor and it was all about, being in person, quite often the most marginalized didn't have a voice. I mean, that is the truth in most of society. But when you've got a space now where we can use these tools and you've got great facilitators or coaches who can really get the most out of them, or leaders, I hope, who've learned how to do this, can you then see that you are creating a much more equitable organization? And I believe if you can do that, you are changing the system because you've changed your own system. And if you change your own system, you're changing a system in society. And that is the dream that I have. Change your system, make it more equitable, give power to everyone because they are powerful. See what they can do, unleash creativity. What a wonderful place that we could be living in. Just utopia, unicorns.
That is the perfect soundbite to end this episode. So, thank you so much.
Hopefully people have found this helpful.
I am no doubt. Thank you, Jeff. And
Thank you, Debbie.
Let's create amazing workplaces. Thanks for hanging around all the way to the end. It would mean the world if you would rate and review on Work and Revolution on your favorite listening app. It helps people know that the show is worth listening to, and so I'll really appreciate that. Thank you so much.